All right, we're back at it again, man. I'm cranking out videos, seventh and eighth grade. Today we're talking about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration. So right now we see how where are we at right now? Buying stock on margin with borrowed money resulted in a economic recession, and how long that lasted, it was really set in. You're in the weeds. Ends up in a depression. Hoover arguably doesn't respond very well to this. People are outraged, especially when it comes to this whole bonus army thing. I mean, his administration is not doing a whole lot of good as far as PR goes. You know what I'm saying? And so what we're talking about today is we're talking about FDR. He's elected after Hoover. And Hoover really loses the election because if you read on page 782, it says that, by 1932, much of the public lost confidence in Hoover. Many even blamed him for the Depression. In contrast, as governor of New York during the first years of the Depression, Franklin D. Roosevelt had taken active steps to provide aid. And so he's elected. Okay, so what does FDR do? And what are we talking about as far as pages today? Today I'm talking about basically 784 through 787, touching on different stuff. But FDR does something. He makes something called the New Deal. That's the bad marker. The New Deal. FDR's New Deal. The New Deal can be thought about this. Basically the opposite of what Hoover was doing. FDR is saying that it's the government's responsibility, the federal government's responsibility, to start providing relief economically for the citizens of America, because otherwise we might not be able to pull ourselves out of here. So we'll talk about the New Deal and what that's all about. One of the cool things about this, I'm going to include one of these as a video. But FDR's Fireside chats. Fireside chat, y'all. Why are they called Fireside chats, and what are they all about? Well, you remember from last week we talked about how the advent of new technology, namely radio, did just a whole bunch for the spreading of different cultures, different traditions, different forms of music, different opinions, broadcasting sports, etc. And radio revolutionizes the world, and it really revolutionizes America. And so what FDR would do, Franklin Delano Roosevelt would have these nightly radio broadcasts where he would be positive, and he would be close, so to speak, to the people. He was talking about what was happening in America, offering, positive encouragement, and sort of a very warm take on what was happening. He was explaining the new laws that were being passed. He was explaining the New Deal, and speaking directly to the American people, at least those people who had radios, really did. I think that you could say safely that these fireside chats, these broadcasts from the president directly to the homes of people in America, did a lot to make people more comfortable and to give people hope. So think about that, the way that politicians and media outlets and our president and presidents past and future presidents interact with the American public, right? How does the way a president or a politician or a senator or a congressman or woman influence the way you think about the state of affairs in America? It does it quite a lot. And so FDR, his fireside chats, really pretty much a 180 from the way that Hoover was interacting with the American people. They like that closeness, okay? So let's talk about the New Deal for a second. What's the New Deal all about? So the New Deal, man, you can find select New Deal programs, the programs and then their purpose on page 787. And the New Deal is defined on 784. It says Roosevelt and Congress worked together to create a new program to battle depression and to aid economic recovery. These programs became known as the New Deal. So a lot of different programs all under the umbrella term of the New Deal. programs to aid the economy and to sort of get us out of this depression. And so a lot of what's going on right now, I believe during this time, 25% of Americans are unemployed. 25% of Americans are unemployed, which is a problem. It's not good. So a lot of what the New Deal does, it tries to get this number of 25% down. You could check, the number where we were at, unemployment-wise before the COVID-19 outbreak and the quarantine and shutting down of businesses and essentially of, the entire country. But 25% is pretty radical unemployment. I don't know off the top of my head, guys, but I think that, we were at like 4% unemployment before this. Be interesting to see where we're at now. But they're trying to get this 25% down because the more people you have unemployed, the more poverty there is, probably the more crime there is. It's not a good place to be in America. So he does a lot of interesting things trying to provide jobs for the American people. And he does a lot of interesting stuff in the way of creating federal or, government provided jobs in order to employ people and also accomplish good stuff for the country. Social Security, the Social Security Act pops up in here, and that's really important. Social Security Act. So what is social? This happens under the New Deal, under FDR. So what is Social Security? Well, on 787, they talk about it passed in 1935, provided some financial security for elderly, the disabled, children, and the unemployed. And Social Security is something that, it's essentially a new tax on people working. So ultimately, they'll have some sort of safety net in the event that they get incredibly injured, they lose their jobs, and they could tap into some of this Social Security money via, unemployment, etc. So we'll come back to this in a bit, but for now, just think that FDR's response to the Depression, much different than Hoover. He has the Fireside chats where he talks directly to the American people, which fosters a sense of hope and security and closeness with the president and with the federal government. And his New Deal, the New Deal just being a term that we use to umbrella all the things that he did and the federal government did to help us get out of this depression. And Social Security is part of that. So think about that, his response. What do you think about the way that Roosevelt responded to this? How do you think that we're responding to the coronavirus outbreak and how that's having a major impact on the economy? And we'll regroup on that tomorrow.